The Rebbe is not a guru in any sense that. No, the Rebbe is more like the Dalai Lama, in the sense that he is imbued with this meaningful post that he did not choose, that it was known from when he was born that this was what he was going to be. And this is true of the Rebbes of all the larger, or at least many of the larger Hasidic groups. They are, sometimes they're crowned in infancy. There have been instances where Rebbes, a Rebbe died and didn't have children, and so his Hasidim would have to find some relative, and they would land on some 9-year-old boy who was his great nephew or something, and they would say, he is going to be our Rebbe. And a 9-year-old boy does not generally show any particular qualities that would make people choose him to be Rebbe. So it's almost a I guess maybe one could say a royal figurehead is a better example than the Dalai Lama. I think the Rebbe does not impart, or at least most Rebbes, and certainly not the skver Rebbe, does not impart spiritual wisdom in any meaningful way that comes from inside himself, rather than from the spiritual tradition that the community already has. This is not meant as a derogatory comment about Rebbes. It's simply to say most of them don't innovate, and most of them are not creative. What they do is sometimes they express what the community's spiritual focus already is and already was before they became Rebbes. One of the other things that I would note about Rebbes is that their leadership is sometimes misunderstood. I think the true leadership in Hasidic communities rests with second-tier leadership, people who put the Rebbes in place. I think this is something that people don't always recognize. There are lots of people who like to criticize Hasidic Rebbes, especially in the U.S. I think in Israel this is true, certainly to some degree. And this criticism generally comes from people who don't understand how a Rebbe comes to be a Rebbe. A Rebbe cannot put himself into that position, and he largely is not in control of maintaining that position. He is also happens to be very often, certainly in the case of the skver Rebbe, probably many others, sometimes the most sheltered person within a very sheltered community. Because sometimes even in a sheltered community, if you're an individual, you can do as I did, get into your car, and when no one's looking, go to the public library. The Rebbe can never do anything like that. The Rebbe can never tell his attendant and say, can we get a smartphone and check, get a Facebook account? The Rebbe can't do that. An individual can do that if he wants to defy the rules. The Rebbe has no access to information that is independent of what his handlers give him. And I think this really limits both his understanding of the world, his understanding of his community's place in the world, and it limits his ability to actually be a true leader, because he simply lacks the information and sometimes even the tools, the personal development is not there. And so to see Rebbes as true leaders, I think, is to misunderstand how they come to be. Although I think the office of the Rebbe the institution is a fascinating position from an anthropological or sociological perspective.